Welcome, everyone. This is our webinar between Bay Path University and Travelers. This is a cybersecurity leadership journey with Anna B. Daley. So Anna is the Vice President of Cybersecurity, Data and Application Security at Travelers. She's a Bay Path University alum from our MS in Cybersecurity program, and she brings nearly a decade of leadership experience in protecting enterprise systems and managing risk at scale. So this should be an amazing conversation. I'm really excited about this. It's so important for us to show the paths that our graduates take, and how you can go into the cybersecurity job market and really land an amazing career. So Anna's going to share her career journey, give us some insights into today's cybersecurity landscape, and a little bit of practical advice for students and professionals looking to grow into leadership roles. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. So, Anna, I guess let's start out a little bit with your career journey. Can you give us just a walkthrough of your path into cybersecurity and what kind of led you to this role, but I guess also what led you to Bay Path in the first place?
Good afternoon, Sean, and thank you for having me. Happy to be part of this great conversation. Hopefully, this will be useful to your students and others at Bay Path. I have started my career journey as a software engineer. I have graduated with bachelor's in computer science, and that naturally led me to being a coder. So I have done coding for a number of years in technologies that are very antique these days, but at the time of my graduation were the top-notch skills. Over few decades, actually probably more like 3 decades of a career, I probably encountered majority of the technologies you can think of. Eventually, I migrated towards Java development, so I wrote some applications for wealth management, were financial, complicated, transactional type of systems. From there, I moved to architecture, which is a very natural path for someone who writes code and develops systems. That was an interesting journey because it opened my eyes to how to design systems, how to think holistically about what is it that we're building beyond just my small piece, beyond my own delivery. So that helped in understanding the bigger picture, broader sense for technology use, implications, and changes in technology. This was also my first exposure to data management. So I performed a lot of DBA type of functions, which was also super helpful in then understanding how the data flows through systems. So you can start to see now I'm spending some time with hands-on experiences, and those experiences are evolving over a period of time. Technologies evolve. What I'm doing with the technology is changing. So after some time, I ended up managing the architecture team, which I was previously part of. Once I started to manage the architecture team, then naturally my roles evolved into management types of roles. But then even here, my career took me on a journey, not only through different companies, but different types of management roles, supporting different technologies, supporting different teams that work in different technologies, and being able to grow and evolve with them. Now, as you can see, I did not start in security right away. Security is actually the most recent discipline within information technology that I am embracing right now. But I feel that my entire experience, my entire career experience was just a wonderful information gathering for being able to be in cybersecurity and having that well-rounded experience. I think, having carried a pager, maybe some of the students will know what that is. Maybe some will not, right? But there was this thing called the pager that would go off at night, and you had to get up and, dial in and fix some problems. I think those experiences are invaluable in understanding the pains of developing systems and what are some of the potential problems, which frankly means what are the security problems that come with perhaps not ideal development of systems. So you can see these experiences, brought me at some point together to cybersecurity. My first work that was security related was actually in a DLP arena, and someone said, "Hey, you'd be great. We need some help with DLP." And my response was, "And what is that exactly?" Right. So I figured out what that is. That's data loss prevention. For those of you who may not know the acronym, it is a widely used concept in a defense in depth from security perspective. There are a variety of different tools that play a role here. Obviously, at Travelers, we have the tool, and actually it lines up to my current role in my current team as well. But you can see, from that point on, my roles were strictly security focused. I even worked at a startup prior to coming to Travelers, where I stood up the entire security and infrastructure part of that startup. Fascinating journey. If you ever have an opportunity to work in a startup, buckle up. It will be an interesting and very educational ride. So really, really good experience, probably more learning than I have ever imagined can be done in a short amount of time, but really valuable. I then decided to solidify my knowledge and experience in security and entered the Bay Path graduate program in cybersecurity, which obviously you can see now it wasn't immediately after my computer science, but I think timing wise it was perfect because it let me migrate towards that field and sort of validate my understanding of security concepts and round me out in areas where maybe I was not 100% on par.
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing about cybersecurity is it draws people from all kinds of different backgrounds, right? As you sort of laid out there, cybersecurity sort of grew up around us, right? I spent many years as a sysadmin, you spent many years doing other things, and as you said, you have some startup experience and so on. But now cybersecurity is like the central thing, right? And certainly it's always going to be important going forward, and is right now like a really, really big deal. But transitioning, like going from just more traditional computer science or running servers, or like you said, having a pager, kind of like paying attention to what's running and what's down and so on. Could you tell us sort of what experiences made the biggest difference in that transition, right, from those technical roles, and then also, you know, as a cybersecurity leader, right, you've got to run a team, you've got to manage people, and those soft skills, I think, are so important now for cybersecurity.
Yeah, you're spot on. It's very different being an individual contributor. So that software engineer, the architect, the DBA, the hands-on person who's given a piece of work to execute on. And it's very different to lead a group of people. It's also very different to lead leaders. So these are all different types of, roles that over the period of time, most of us sort of move through. I won't lie. The first management role was hard. And I think particularly hard because my first management role was managing an architecture team that I was previously part of. So all of a sudden I found myself, oh, my friend over here whom I used to kibitz with and strategize, what are we going to do, how we're going to design the system. I have to now give direction to this person. I have to write this person's performance review, and I want to make sure that I am, um, not having favorites, right? That I treat everyone equally, that I treat everyone with the same level of attention and dedication, and some of those very basic things were very, very hard, um, because I was part of that team before. So I think Here where most corporations are super helpful in developing their new managers, there is obviously an HR curriculum that most companies will put a new manager through. Travelers does very much the same for brand new managers. Lots of attention is given to these people to make them successful. Um, you know, there is the saying that people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. So I think that tells you something right there, right? If you built that great relationship with your staff, you have a great level of understanding and appreciation of the work, you're able to give them direction that they need, but that direction needs to also be customized. Different people on your team will have different experiences. You may have someone who's super experienced in one task, and then you give them a task that maybe they've never done before, and all of a sudden they find themselves needing more of your help, more direction. Maybe they want to strategize, maybe they want to talk through it. Maybe you need to pair them up with someone else altogether, right? So as a manager, you need to be able to look at the people on your team and customize your management style in some ways to fit their style. Of course, it goes both ways, right? They need to understand what their manager requires as well. So, creating a welcoming, productive environment is a key for any manager at any level. Every person on the team is different, and I think that's a wonderful thing. I always tell my team we're like this giant puzzle of different pieces. Each piece is kind of a little weird on their own, right? Like you're looking at it and like I don't know, right? Different colors, maybe a slightly different shape, like I don't know where to put it. But when you have the whole puzzle put together, it's wonderful, right? You have clarity of the picture of where you're going, what you're trying to achieve. And that is how teams work, right? It's managers' job to build that puzzle with their staff so that everyone is a contributor and can show value. Hopefully that answers your question.
Sure. I mean, all of that is incredible. And I think it is really important to kind of highlight that shift, right? Especially when you go from doing sort of academic work, like doing group work with people, people are in your cohort, right? And you go into an institution or so some job, let's say a startup, let's say it's a bigger place, and suddenly you're the manager. They're doing some tasks. Maybe they're even on another team, right? Sort of managing those relationships is such a difficult task. And I guess one of the things I've been trying to highlight in the Bay Path curriculum is what to do when something goes wrong, right? When there's a major event, when there's a 0 day or there's DDoSing or these kinds of attacks we're dealing with all the time. How to handle that without laying blame, how to handle that with making sure the right people are sort of the ones who are, in the trenches, and then sort of doing that retrospective, right? Looking at the event from sort of a high level view. How do you handle that? Can you give us an example of maybe something you've dealt with or, a situation where you found yourself have to sort of triage with your staff?
Yeah, so I think this is something that you should probably, well, all of you should look at through two different lenses, right? So any company you'll go to work for will have an incident management process in place in one shape, form, or another. In the other words, when something goes wrong, there is a process in place that helps you navigate the problem. What do you need to do? Do you need to submit a ticket? Do you need to notify someone, right? So it may vary from company to company, but there is a process in place on what to do, who to notify, and then you have things like, well, if whatever happened is in your area of responsibility, well, how exactly do you fix this problem, right? So again, most of the time there are procedures, processes that are in place that help you navigate some of this, right? But then a lot of it depends on your own individual knowledge. You may have to tap into knowledge of others. most of the time, there's a group of people that would come together and collaborate. Of course, please keep in mind no two things are the same, right? Hopefully we're not having the same problem over and over. We're not doing something right? So each problem is slightly different, and the severity of each problem is different. So in one cases, you may be able to just follow instructions and resolve it in relatively short amount of time. In another case, you may have to put a task force together. And maybe it's a multi-step process where we call it stop the bleeding, right? So you essentially restore service, but you then start the work on the back end, trying to understand, well, what exactly happened? What do we need to do differently that we do not repeat this again? What are some of those measures that would prevent the next incident or something of that nature happening the next time, right? So these are all things from a technology perspective that follow ITSM practices. I'm sure a lot of students will have some understanding of what that is. And if it's not something you're familiar with, you know what, probably a good idea to go look that up. And I'm sure ChatGPT would be glad to explain what that is and how it works. And it's pretty much how it's done in most of the corporations. So not a bad idea to look through that. Now, there is also an aspect of people management, and I would say like an emotional management through some sort of an incident. So if you happen to be a manager at the time of something going awry, you want to support your team. You don't want to start looking for blame. This is not the right time to be pointing fingers and such. This is the right time to come together, understand what the problem is, and figure out how you can, as quickly as possible, again, restore service, right? That's the whole premise. And then work on the back end to understand how to prevent this from happening again. The manager's role is to be supportive. Sometimes maybe manager needs to provide special approvals if you need to put something to production, maybe off cycle. So there are things that a manager can do to enable the team, or maybe make some connections with another team that you typically don't work with, right? Maybe your team doesn't fully understand who else can help, who else can we pull in to provide additional guidance or weigh in on the solution that we're trying to put in. When you work in large corporations, there is decades of development, decades of different systems and technologies, and sometimes a change on the database side can be very impactful across many applications, but also changes to identity and access management have a profound impact and can have impact throughout the entire corporation. So these types of changes require particular evaluation and scrutiny to make sure that you don't make the problem worse, but that you actually remedy what you're trying to address to begin with.
Yeah, so on that front, you mentioned sort of the emotional sort of staying calm and so on. When we teach cybersecurity, I find we talk about emerging threats, right? We talk about all this stuff that's coming down the pipeline, and now it's very, very real. I noticed we went almost 20 minutes without mentioning AI, but you did. Can you describe to us what you see changing in the field right now? This last year has been very hectic. Obviously, AI is on everybody's mind. Have you seen your job change significantly in 2026 and late 2025?
Yes, absolutely. I think all of our jobs have changed, and they will continue to evolve at rapid pace. We all use AI at Travelers. We have agreements with, AI corporations. So we use it for software development. We use AI just to aid in the regular business processes. So depends on your role. Like if you're a software engineer, you use AI to code. I'm sure you use it for other things, like maybe something basic as creating a PowerPoint presentation or doing research on something. AI is a wonderful tool for learning. we continuously learn brand new technology. So like newsflash, learning doesn't end when you leave school, right? It's just starts, and it really just means that you know how to learn. And now the actual journey of learning begins at work as well, right? So school prepared you for how to learn, how to be effective at learning, how to get the most value out of it. And now in a work environment, every one of us has to learn each and every day. We do this all the time. So how I use AI is, this new thing comes out, and I don't know, there is new vendor. Somebody's telling me, listen, Anna, you do data security. I attended a conference, and oh my goodness, brand new vendor showed up. How come we don't have this vendor here? And of course, uh, this is the first time I even hear the name, right? So first thing you do is you ask AI, well, what is this, right? How does this company and their product fit into my space? And you learn by conversing, by asking questions, doing comparisons. Here are some of the features we have. Here are maybe some of the gaps we have. How can this vendor help? Can this product help close some of the gaps? What are some of the pitfalls of these implementations? Um, I'll be honest, it's a very rapidly evolving space. I think, last year, was the first time we heard something called MCP server, and we're like, what's that? And like, wow, do we need that? Right? But now it's just part of our regular vocabulary, and we don't think about it twice. We are incorporating this into building brand new systems for travelers. And I'm sure many other companies are doing very much the same. Things like Mythos are in the news, but that's last week. Next week, there'll be probably something else. And that should be expected, right? So what do we do with that? We look at the news feeds all the time, and I think you have Nick here on a call with us. He and his team do a lot of fantastic research for travelers and provide some of that education. What is happening at a broader perspective, and what does travelers take on what is happening in the industry? And then, we take what we think would be valuable to the company, and we try to apply it. We try to apply it in the offensive and defensive measures, depending on what the technology is. But really, it's embracing it. People with AI will replace those that don't use AI, right? So we are going to be more productive. We're going to be more efficient. And, this is just the future.
Sure, and that's one of the things I always try to hammer home. It's like this term AI that we use so much. It's just part of the software stack, right? It's part of the tools we use. And really, in cybersecurity, we've been using it for a long time. You mentioned a couple things that around sort of software supply chain and so on. Can you describe, I guess, and you're talking about all these vendors and so on, trying to integrate all these tools. That's a whole field in and of itself, right? Trying to get the enterprise to get sort of ramped up with new changes, but also not necessarily making changes just because it's the newest, freshest thing. I guess let's dial it back a little bit. What is the scope of the number of systems you manage, the number of users we're talking about, how worldwide the systems you're looking at are?
Well, I have responsibility for AI, data, and applications for travelers. So my scope is everything, right? Because if you think of
Yeah.
it, it's every system, it's every piece of data, and it's all the AI use, of course, from security perspective, not necessarily the business logic, and such. But that's the scope. We have 3,500 software engineers at Travelers, and probably another 1,000 of data engineers. Um, they're cranking out code now at lightning speed, and we need to make sure that what is out there is secure, that it complies with our standards. We do have lots of great security tools that can be available to the software engineer during the SDLC, so your software development lifecycle. We also have tools that monitor the security of what is already in production, what is running, and how is that weathering. As you know, software today is primarily comprised of software that someone else wrote, right? So your open source libraries, this is no longer 80% custom code and 20% someone else's code. It's probably approaching the reverse of that, right? So a lot of that code is reused. We want to make sure that we monitor for vulnerabilities. And with technologies like Mythos, where there is a potential to discover vulnerabilities, zero-day vulnerabilities at lightning speeds, and then frankly come up with attack vectors for these zero-day vulnerabilities in hours, not weeks, not days, but hours. This also means that we need to be able to react within hours and minutes, not weeks, right?
Yeah.
So Microsoft monthly patch, I don't know, right?
Patch Tuesday, not a thing anymore, right?
Yeah, I don't know that has a long running future here, right? We're gonna have to do something differently. The environment is changing and everything we do is different and changing. So we need to be able to change with it, react, and keep up, stay ahead if possible.
And yeah, that's such a huge change. And I talk about open source all the time. And, when I said supply chain, that's sort of what I was hinting at. But another piece of it that I think is sort of important is, especially post-COVID, right? A lot of BYOD, remote work. I mean, we're speaking remotely right now. Locking down those systems and handling those systems is a pretty big challenge. How do you see your work sort of crossing over with that? How do you handle that now? And where are we going with it?
Yeah, so actually, remote work and how we handle that, we got really good with this right at COVID time. We were tinkering with it just like most companies, right? People would have laptops, and there was still some blend of laptops and desktops. And then COVID hit, and all of a sudden, we had to we had to be all remote. We had to figure out how to make it work, and we did. So thankfully, right, we at least going into this AI era with some of these basic, networking and connectivity issues figured out, right? So I think that's good. Managing identities is critical. Managing, your passwords to systems, right? How exactly do you log in? How do I know that Sean O'Brien is Sean O'Brien when he's calling and saying, I forgot my password and I am a database administrator and could you reset my password? Right. So how exactly do I make sure that Sean is who he says he is versus someone who just pretends to be Sean? So these are not small problems. We have, of course, ways of identifying and validating individuals, and um, we have to stay vigilant. Bad actors are super creative. We have we have shared some of the calls actually on a very broad all employee meetings. We have demonstrated what some of these calls look like. We get them obviously all the time. We are being attacked all the time. That should not be a surprise. Most corporations are not like we're some prime target, but we are out there. We have a web presence, so we are subject to different attacks. So playing some of these messages and showing what that looked like, it's a wonderful education for all of us. Travelers has more than 30,000 employees, and 10% of them being in IT, right? Maybe a little bit more, but there's a lot of business people. There is a lot of legal support staff. These people are, users of IT, but they're not IT people. Their understanding of some of these concepts is very different. They use the systems that we create and they trust that they provide the level of security that's required. So we do need to give them a lot of good education and prepare them to spot the problems. They are, in fact, like the first line of defense, I would say, right? I always keep telling people that, security is a team sport. It's not just the cybersecurity team running defense and everybody else just, benefiting from all of our hard work. It's all of us, right? We're all in this together. Um, it only takes one person to fall victim, um, and it could be a devastating impact for the company.
So one of the things that I think is interesting, the course of the last year, we talk about the CIA triad all the time, right? Confidentiality, integrity, availability. We had a lot of availability problems, right? The ISERO botnet, all these huge botnets, and so on. Um, I mean, it's always been in the realm of cybersecurity, but it's always with these other teams too, right? Your sysadmins, your network admins, the people running
Mm-hmm.
the actual infrastructure. Have you found that you need to do more there, or you've had to sort of change your approach and look at that differently in the course of the past year?
Yeah, so, most companies are either in a cloud or moving to the cloud, or, maybe some sort of hybrid where a lot of their infrastructure is already in a cloud. It's a great benefit to being able to recover more seamlessly, right? All of a sudden, ability to block at scale, control where you're running from this region or a different region, things are a lot easier than being able to just maneuver this between your own data centers and you have version A and version B, right? And once you go to B, there is no C. No, nobody has like three data centers that they can run from, right? So I think cloud actually provided a wonderful way for everyone to be more resilient and combat these problems very differently than what we would have done just a short while back.
Yeah, so you don't have people with their hair on fire sort of running and pulling server racks, things like that, of course.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 So take us back a little bit. So when you were at PayPath doing the MS in cybersecurity program, so first off, what drew you to PayPath? And then second, I would say, can you tell us a couple things that you took from the program that now inform what you do today?
Yeah, of course. So why I chose Bay Path, I wanted something local. I wanted a local school. Please keep in mind, I got my degree during COVID, right? So it was a little bit of an interesting time to be at school. And I wasn't quite sure, well, you know, this whole online education, I completed my undergraduate butts and seats, right? So this is all of a sudden going from a classroom education to online education with like a 20-year gap in between for me. So it was a little bit of an adjustment. So I wanted to make sure I picked the right school that would give me an opportunity to go see someone in person if I needed to, someplace where there would be a community and a support mechanism built into the education. And I think Bay Path was wonderful with that, right? So there was still a very vibrant campus culture. I got a chance to meet my instructors in person, and I thought that was really important and impactful. Um, there was also great sort of collaboration and community that was built online, and that was a surprise for me. Like again, I didn't know quite what to expect, but it turned out to be quite wonderful. There are still people that I am friends with, haven't gone through the school there, right? So I think that speaks volume right there. I think we've also hired quite a few here at Travelers, which is wonderful. So that was sort of the reason why I chose the school. Now, again, I didn't take up my graduate degree immediately after my undergrad, right? So there was a quite a few years there in between where I was building out my knowledge, kind of layering my skills, and now finally commencing with the graduate degree. So very different experience than someone else might have had. But what was really good for me was sort of polishing my knowledge and getting it more organized. And I thought that was really good. And, haven't been a coder before. I really enjoyed the Python class. I thought like, oh, this is great. I never learned Python in my undergrad, so now I get to take Python in my grad school. And I thought that was like the best thing ever, right? I felt a little bit more modernized. So that was really good. But there were a bunch of other things that I thought were very important and educational. A lot of discussions about the laws and regulations and how they're structured. And I think for me, being able to organize that better, sort of give that more structure and how laws are developed, what drives them. I think that was super important for me to get a deeper understanding of. I thought the
So
program was fantastic, very helpful, and I'm so glad I went through it. It really was.
that's so great to hear. And I will say that piece of it, right, just drilling into it a little bit, um, laws, regulation, obviously we're seeing a lot of renewed regulation, all kinds of things around privacy, age restrictions or whatever, verification and so on. Where do you see all of that going, and how do you see that being part of the cybersecurity, management role?
Yeah, I think everyone in cyber needs to have a level of awareness of the changing environments from a regulatory perspective. Our day-to-day management of those regulations is done with our partners in the legal department. They actually dig in, take a look, and interpret those laws as it pertains to our company. And why that matters is because on the surface, it may appear that something is applicable or not applicable, but there is fine print that our legal department is intimately familiar with and can say, this part applies, this other part were exempt, and here is why, right? Which then is really important because it translates what actions do we take, at which actions, we don't need to worry about. What do we need to implement? What protections are important? And where we don't need to worry about it because it doesn't apply to our industry, right? So super critical, that legal partnership. It is an evolving landscape. California is always on the forefront of the latest and the greatest changes, and they're brewing up a few more changes. I can only imagine there'll be some AI, legal laws coming out of that state, and New York is always not too far behind, so I'm sure there'll be more coming out of that. We're watching it closely. Laws move quickly, but then at the same time, there is always adequate amount of time to get ready and prepare and react. And it's generally understood that when you have corporations like Travelers or others, you cannot make these changes at a knife switch, right? This takes time and being thoughtful and make sure you're thorough and you can implement the changes the right way.
100%. And, especially the California law coming out, I saw the acronym API in there and I said, who told that law to make? It's so interesting to see that's starting to come in. So I think you're right. I think we'll see a little more technical language sort of cross over with the legal. So building the curriculum for me, right? And Nick Kelly, who you mentioned, we've had a couple of conversations around, curriculum and, what's important to emphasize and so on. There's sort of a struggle that I feel, what certifications to recommend, whether you go more technical, whether you go more like, into the management certs and so on. Where do you see that line, both for yourself, what was most useful for you from a cert standpoint? And if you had to recommend to someone else to sort of be in your role today, what industry certs, what vendor certs would you recommend?
I think having general IT knowledge and understanding will go a very long way. Why? Um, you still need to be able to ask good questions of AI. It's not mind reading yet, right? So we need to be able to tell it what we want to achieve. And there needs to be some level of validation that what came back is not a complete hallucination, that it is, based on the actual standards, and that it makes sense for the environment, right? You cannot do that without having basic understanding of IT concepts, security concepts, right? Patching's not going away, right? Basic hygiene, understanding why that's important, understanding basic vulnerabilities, what are the implications of them? Why do I need to worry about prompt injection? How is that executed? So some of these basic things are going to persist. Now, in terms of certifications, I think CISSP is always a good one. That's a good certification to have. It's something that has a very broad, I think is it 8 different disciplines that it covers, right? So I think it's really good to understand different aspects of security. I personally have CISM certification, which, it's a risk certification that sort of is like the other side of the coin from CISSP. But I also have certifications from Harvard in managing risk and information age, which is more of a management type of a certification. So, different things. Now, will it be important to get AI certifications? Sure, right? I think this would demonstrate, especially when you're entering the field, that you have thorough understanding of how AI works, how to apply it. Frankly, I'm hearing things that interviews will be changing to demonstrating how you can converse with AI versus just showing a certification. So, how effective are you in asking AI to deliver on a specific task, and that being part of an interview process during the interview itself, right? So, I think that will be rapidly changing as well. I think these are really good certifications. There's a bunch of I would call discipline specific certifications, which are still very helpful. But then there's also a couple general ones like Security Plus or Network Plus, which I would say are more general, indicative of understanding of basics from a security perspective.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I didn't want to call out the new AI certifications. I'm not sure what to think of them yet, but we'll see. Maybe they'll be standard before we know it.
Yeah.
So, the job market obviously is the question on everybody's mind, and these things are changing so quickly. And AI, of course, is shifting that whole environment. If you had to give advice to a Bay Path graduate, let's say they go through, they do the MS program, and then they're on the job market, can you give sort of a couple things that you would advise to them to sort of make them stand out in the job market?
Yeah, I would say don't wait till you graduate. I would say begin your journey in looking for your future employer and testing out your waters as you're going through your undergraduate program. That's not too early. Some of you will go to grad, some of you will not, right? But test your waters and make relationships, build relationships during the process of attaining your education. First, you'll get to see how the work is done, so it will benefit you in your academic life, and then you can bring your learning into work. So it's a really wonderful, beneficial relationship that goes both ways. So definitely do that. I think if you've been successful in getting an internship, then you can transition that into a job most of the time, and that works really well. The company already knows you. You have essentially interviewed for the entire summer you were there. You've built new friendships, right? You've learned. You have a way in versus coming in cold. I graduated, ta-da, right, and now looking for your place of employment. But should you find yourself, have graduated, what do I do? There is still programs that different companies have that take in recent graduates. And different companies probably call them by different names. Travelers calls it the Engineering Development Program, where we take graduates, recent graduates, and enter them into a 1 year long program, giving them an opportunity to learn. We place them within a specific team, and they're an employee of Travelers, but like I would call like an employee in learning, right, and training, and they're given opportunities to learn, and then eventually they graduate from that program, given good performance and such, and then move into a full-time employment as a software engineer or maybe data scientist and such. Of course, those fields also transition to cybersecurity. So, just like I said, having understanding of how IT works, hey, being able to dabble with code, that's wonderful. Now you can tell Claude or ChatGPT how to write the code to automate the security challenge that you see, right? So this all ties in together. Please don't consider engineering development program as something that wouldn't line up to cybersecurity. It absolutely does. So a lot of companies have these types of programs, and I think that's a great way to enter the workforce.
Well, I think that's a very good note to end on. Anna, thank you so much. You're a rock star. Your experience and all those insights, they're so important for our students, for our community at Bay Path to sort of hear all of this and to see a real living example of someone who's making a big difference. I'm Sean O'Brien. I'm Program Director for Bay Path University's Cybersecurity and Computer Science programs. And if you're joining us, watching this, please reach out to us. Please check out the great work that Travelers is doing and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having us.